it is my proud privilege to offer you the right hand of fellowship and to greet you once again as a citizen and shipwright of London.
A 250,000 of our soldiers, fully armed and equipped, were already being loaded into ships for the great assault on Malaya. An assault that we now know from General Itagaki's own plans could not have failed to be overwhelmingly successful, for the Japanese had only got 130,000 troops in Malaya. They did not know when or where our attack was coming. All they knew was that the tide of war had long turned against them. My Lord Mayor, on behalf of all those who fought with me in Southeast Asia, I thank you again for having honored them today in honoring me. My Lord Mayor, Your Highness, Your Eminence, my lords, ladies and gentlemen, the freedom of the City of London is by common consent the greatest civic honor in the British Empire. I am deeply appreciative of its bestowal on me today, and the sword of honor, which will be my most treasured possession, shall hang above that sword which was surrendered to me by the Japanese Supreme Commander of the Southern Regions, Field Marshal Count Terauchi. My personal gratification is completely overshadowed, however, by the pride I feel in being privileged to represent all the men and women of the Allied forces in the Southeast Asia Command and to accept this great honor on their behalf, the more so since so many of them came from London. Some of them have already been honored by the City of London a year ago in the person of General Sir William Slim, to whom the Lord Mayor afforded the opportunity of recounting some of the deeds of his gallant 14th Army. And I know that they appreciate that recognition very much indeed. The capture of Mandalay coincided with the crossing of the Rhine. The fall of Rangoon took place in VE week. Here at home, the war in Europe was of absorbing interest. Inevitably so, since you yourselves were actually in the zone of battle. And it is understandable that the achievements of the forces so far away should, to a great extent, have had to take second place. I doubt whether the circumstances in which the men in Southeast Asia fought, or the way in which they daily triumphed over difficulties which at times seemed almost insurmountable, are even now fully appreciated. The troops in Southeast Asia overcame all obstacles: the mountain ranges, the jungle, the monsoon, the ravages of malaria. But perhaps the most disheartening factor with which the theatre had to contend was that it continued to be the lowest on the priority list. Having myself been a full member of the Chiefs of Staff's Committee, which in 1943 decided which requirements of world strategy should have priority, I was the last person who could have had any right to complain because of world shortage and the urgent need of building up forces and equipment in Europe and in the Pacific left so little to spare for my own theatre. But the outward and visible signs of this became evident to the troops. In the midst of the Burma campaign, the order was received to send back certain artillery ammunition, as it was required in the European theatre. Now, it must have been difficult for the men who were loading this ammunition to appraise the greater need for it in Europe than there was in Burma, just as it was difficult for my Americans and Chinese to understand why the Munitions Assignment Board diverted the 100 Sherman tanks which had been promised to them to replace those on loan from the 14th Army, because they were now urgently required in Europe. In fact, I believe at the conclusion of the Japanese surrender, the enemy were in full retreat at sea, on land, and in the air, and 190,000 of them had been killed in the Burma campaign alone.